Hey, welcome to Easy Painting. Last time we were working on a little mountain scene, and we got pretty much up to where the lake begins. That I was going to show you what to do. So recently we've been doing classes over at the Comac Bowling Alley over in the party room there. We've been having a lot of fun with that. We've had some great times. We've had seniors and kids and everybody coming through taking classes with us. So I just want to thank everybody for their support and coming down and painting with us. We've been having a great time. So anyway, let's get right to business. What I got here is a new palette that I've been using. It's great for when you're on the road or like you're doing plein air painting. It's a disposable palette. Great for acrylics or oils. Now if we just go to the palette for a second, what I want to show you is the different colors that I'll be working with today. All right, and we're starting off with titanium white. This is an actual pre-mix color you can buy. It's called leaf green, which I like to use in my landscapes. I have an Indian yellow, a yellow ochre, and then I wanted a real dark brown for like my trees and rocks and stuff like that. So I used a burnt umber with some black. I have a burnt sienna here and a bright red, cadmium orange, and a sap green, and a cadmium yellow. So those are our colors in our landscape palette for tonight. All right. So what I'm going to do is, when I left off last time, I was working on the background foliage, the trees there, and I hadn't really got a chance to start highlighting them. So what I did was I added just a little bit of what they call slow dry. It helps keep the back moist and the paint wet. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that leaf green color real quick. All right, and I'm just going to come back. I'm going to start working on these trees again. And remember, I was using a fan brush. I was just using a light tap, and I'm just kind of tapping along these trees up here. And kind of putting in some more highlight colors, some different tones of greens in there, and kind of make these pop out a little bit more. Now down below them, I'll kind of maybe put in some grass and foliage and stuff like that, just the bushes, whatever. It's too far away. We don't really have to put a lot of detail in there. But I'm using the brush horizontally here and kind of just tapping in a flat way. But I'm using more of the corner of the brush. The corner of the brush is the most important part because you don't want to use the whole brush because it leaves that footprint of a fan brush. And a lot of artists don't like that. They rather not use the fan brush because of that. But I like it for these particular techniques. It works very well for me. But like I said, try to use the fan brush to your advantage. Now I'm using it vertically, and I'm going along those trees and just highlighting them. Okay. Some of them you might want to make a little more pronounced to kind of bring out some of those branches, whatever, here and there. And going the opposite way, you can create this change in the structure of the landscape. And it also adds a little bit more interest to the background. Okay, so I'm just going to go continue along there and highlight some of this. These big trees over here, I'll highlight the edges of them. Keeping in mind, I'm leaving a lot of the darks in here, all right, and making sure that it has more of a three-dimensional look to it. It's not flat. So I'm kind of working along the edges. And the light source seems to be coming from this direction, so I'm working more on the right side of the trees, creating the highlights on those sides of the trees. Now, you know what I'll do is I'll give my brush a little rinse. It's always good to work with a clean, moist brush. I'll wipe it off just a little bit. I'll come back to some of that dark green color, and I'll tap in where I overdid it a little bit with the highlights and just subdue them a little bit more. being that it's in the background, you don't really want a lot of detail. Less is more. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring some grassy areas down. And I'm just using the flat edge of my brush. And I'm just going to come down and create some flat, grassy knolls, so to speak, coming down, little peninsulas that are coming out into the landscape. Now I won't go too far with this because I'm going to drop a little lake in there. So I'm going to just start the background a little bit around the back of the lake first, and then I'll come up. All right. I'll rinse my brush again. Give it a quick wipe. All right, so now let's see. When you start to work on the background colors, you want to make sure that, like I said, that they're a little bit not as bright. So when I use my palette to my advantage, instead of using a bright yellow, which I use more on a foreground highlight, I'll use my yellow ochres or Indian yellows, and I'll load that up. So go to the palette real quick. And when I load this up, I'm loading it flat. I'm pulling from the pile. Okay, pulling from the pile. I'm getting a nice load on there. And that should be good, all right? So we'll go up to the up to the canvas, and I'm just gonna add just a little bit of highlight to the tops of this grass a little bit. Just here and there. Some little highlights. Okay, and this will pop out, so you want to try and keep the darks in there as well. Just little bits here and there of this color. And once again, I'm using it vertically. Okay, we'll rinse that brush real quick. And let's have some fun. Let's go to the palette again. And I'm going to take some brown. And I'm just going to make a little pile of brown right there. And maybe I'll add just a little bit of sienna to it, a little burnt sienna. Really won't see much of a difference, but it gives a little bit more of a flavor to it. And I'm going to take the corner of my knife. Now this is a little bit unusual for most people to do it first, but you get used to it. I take the corner of my knife and I just pull a bead out with my knife. All right, so you can see there's like a little bead on there. And I'm going to create a little rocks in these little grassy peninsulas that I'm bringing out into the lake. So I'll put like a little, and same way we did the mountains last time, I'm going to just put a couple little rocks in there. Okay. And these are fun to give adds a little more interest to the ground and the rear background of the landscape. You know, and these are far away, so you're not really going to see a lot of detail in this yet. And see, so I'm just creating some little rocks. You know, maybe there's some dirt and shadow areas in there too. Okay, also I'm going to do a little scrape in a little line here. Create a little dirt area between the lake and the grass. And remember, you want to keep that as flat as you can. Just got to wipe this off a second. And we're trying to keep it flat as we can, and we're trying to get a little bit of transition between the land there and the water. So we want to make sure that we cut in with the knife. I just kind of cut into the grassy areas with the brown. Over here as well. Like so. All right, put my palette knife down real quick. Grab a fan brush. And I'm just going to add just a little bit of highlight to the tops of this brown area using a little yellow ochre. And I kind of pull back that land mass a little bit. Create some dirt areas maybe in the grass underneath the rocks. And then I'll just go into a little of my sap green, tap some grass around the tops of that, top of the dirt here and there. Give my brush a quick rinse, and I'll grab my palette knife again. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight those rocks. So let's go to my palette real quick. I'm going to grab a little of that yellow ochre and a little bit of Van Dyke brown, or burnt sienna, I'm sorry, and a little burnt umber and a little burnt sienna together. That'll be my rock highlight color. Okay, I'll take a little scrape off of that. I'll come back to the rocks. We get a little close up on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight just the edges of these rocks, like I did the mountains, but not as bright. And I'll create just a little bit of highlight on those little rocks in there. Okay, go on the other side, do the same thing. And then maybe a little highlight on the tops of the dirt. All right, cool. All right, let's have a little fun. I'm going to go to my detailing brush. It's basically a filbert brush. You can get these in any art store. It's a filbert AB400, and it's rounded at the tip, and that's what I like. I want it to be able to have a roundness on there so I can create different types of effects in my painting. I'm going to go to my palette, and I'm going to load my brush. When I load my brush, I'm putting the brush tip into the pile and pulling out. Once again, I want a full load on the brush. I'm not just loading the tip, I'm loading the whole brush. And I'm going to create a little tree coming up over here. So I'm going to start right up here. And it's good if you want to lean your finger against the canvas, you can. And just pull straight down. And I'll put a little tree right there. Okay. And he's going to look pretty cool. Thicker on the bottom of the trunk. Okay. And I'm going to put him right near the rocks right there. Maybe he's got a little buddy that lives over here. One of my favorite TV artists, Bob Ross, used to say that all the time. Perhaps he's got a little friend. All right, so we got a little tree going there, a little tree going over there. Fill it in a little bit. Now at the same time, what I'll do is while I'm at it, I'm going to load my highlight. So I'm just going to go into a little bit of yellow ochre. Get a little yellow ochre on my brush. Okay. Same thing, just loading it full. And I'm just going to go now, remember our light direction's coming from this way. So I'm just going to go up along the edges of the tree and create a little bit of highlight there. Same thing on this side. Obviously the light's on the opposite side of the tree over here, so I'll just create just a little highlight on that. Give it a quick rinse. And let's put in a couple of limbs real quick. So using the tip of my brush very lightly, I'll create just a couple little limbs coming off the tree. Maybe there's a couple. And this is an artist's trick, making your limbs kind of point out or down towards the interest of the painting. Okay, this guy got a couple little limbs up in here. Who knows? Most of this is going to get covered anyway. Have a couple of the limbs, like I said, pointing out towards the subject. That draws your viewer's eye in. Do the same thing over here. Bring a limb or two out. And I'm just lightly touching. Got to make sure your paint's nice and loose and wet. Very important. And I'm not really messing around too much with a lot of limbs on this one. Just a couple here and there. Okay, so he looks good, he looks good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with a small fan brush, moisten the bristles just a little bit.